Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back with me, Mr. Amrunas, biology teacher for 8th grade here. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman warzuqni fahman. Uh, in this video, I'm going to explain several questions from is 3 or the third is in within this term. So these questions actually from previous years. In here, I have 13 questions. I will explain to you one by one the best answer and about the explanations why we choose that answer. All right. For number one, in this slide, you can see, okay, the question is about waters and related with photosynthesis. Number one, in which form most of the waters taken up by plants will eventually diffuse out of the leaf. So as you know, the leaf part is really important for photosynthesis in plant, and the structures of the leaf, the upper part and the below part. In the below part, most of the plants, it contains the structures like the mouth, or we call it stoma or stomata. So basically, this is the part when where the waters can release and the gases can intake by the plant. So the plants get waters from soil and it absorbed by root hair cells, and then it intake to the vessels, and after that it will brings into the leaf. So inside the leaf, and then some waters can release to the environment as well. So most of waters after it taken up and it will diffuse out or release to the environment, get rid of the leaf through stomata. The best answer is as waters favor. So it release, right? Favor, the waters can favor. It changes the state of matter. Once inside the plant, the waters, the state of matter is in the liquid, but after that, it changes the state of matter into the gas. So it can favors to the environment towards the mother as water favors. So if we cover up the leaf with a plastic bag, for example, after you leave it, you leave the paper bag, you tie them up, and then you release you leave them. After several hours, you can see there is waters, right? Waters inside in the surface of the paper bag. So that means this is the explanations why the plants, is it true the plants release waters as water vapors. So you can do that experiment to get the results. So basically the best answer, the correct answer for number one here is D, as water vapor. All right, next question, number two. Why photosynthesis is described as an endothermic reactions? So within chemistry, related with science, biology, and physics. So as you know that the reactions, we can say that endothermic reactions or exothermic reactions. So what's the difference? So the difference here is based on the heat. Based on the heat, is it intake the heat? Is it receive the heat, or is it release the heat? So when the reactions intake the heat or get the heat, we call this is endo. So that's mean endo is inside, and then exo, that is outside. So when it released to the environment, the heat released to the environment, we call it exothermic. So in photosynthesis, this is the reactions, we call it endothermic. So why basically this is endothermic? So it must relate it with the energy, the heat must relate it with the energy. So it require energy from the light source. It could be from the sun, the sunlight, or it could be from another resource. that give the heat, such as the lamp. It still have a length of the light, the light. So it required the energy, or we call it the energy, light energy. We call it photon. So basically, it can receive, get resource from the sun or sunlight or another resource such as the lamp. So why this is endothermic? So the best answer to this for this question, um, because photosynthesis require energy. So why A, B, and C is wrong are wrong? Because photosynthesis release energy. It release energy in substance. We call it glucose, but actually it produce energy. But that is not the reasons why we call it endothermic. That is not true. And then B, because photosynthesis require oxygen. As you know that the oxygen is the gas released after the two directions of photosynthesis, not required. So the gas required for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide. And then because of this is require sugar, not the glucose or the sugar for these reactions is actually the substance they produce after all reactions in photosynthesis. As you know that the word equation for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide and then water. It releases sugar or glucose plus oxygen. So in these questions, endothermic reactions, we call it because photosynthesis require energy. Right. The next question, this is about vessels in the plant. As I talked to you before, um, living things, complex living things, such as humans and the plants, of course, we have the vessels in our body. As you already learned about human vessels, we call it a circulatory system, right? We have the structures like the vessels. That means it carries the substance. We call it the blood, right? And then the blood flows inside the blood vessels. So we have such as like the blood vessels, artery, veins, and capillaries. But in plants, there are only two tissues, right? Tissues, or this is, we call it vessels. They are xylem and phloem, right? You should remember this one, xylem and phloem. It's contained inside the root and then connected with the strung or stem. And then it, in the end, we have the structures inside the leaf, even if like the tiny uh, veins of these structures, it still contains xylem and phloem. So what the difference with of the xylem and phloem? The xylem, it carries waters and minerals from the root or from the below part to the leaf, to the upper part. Because for photosynthesis, it require waters. So that means it need to take to brings it or to carries it to the leaf. And after that, after the do photosynthesis, it will release carbon dioxide, of course, and then I'm sorry, it will release oxygen, and then it will produce the substance. We call it carbohydrate, sugar, or glucose. So the glucose, this is the substance they need for living. They consume the glucose for respiration. All the cell needs glucose, but they produce in the leaf. Most of the plant produce in the leaf. So it need brings to or to carriers to give them to deliver them to all parts of the organs, including the root, right? The fruit, the leaf itself, the trunk, and the flowers as well. So it need to deliver to all parts of the body of plant. So that structures that carries glucose, we call it phloem, right? You should know from the leaf to all part of the body of plants, we call it phloems that carries the substance called glucose. So in this experiment, we have celery plants. We cut them, and then we have beaker here, and then we have solutions we make a blue dye solution in here, and then we put the celery inside, right? As you know, this is still celery is still alive. The cells are still alive there, so they still can intact the substance in here, waters and another substance in this solution. After we put them up, uh, several hours or 24 hours, a celery stalk is placed in the bag and the beaker of blue dye. Once the dye reach the leaf, so from here it will reach the leaf here. The stalk is taken out and cut in half, and then we cut them in half in here. You can see, and then based on these structures, which diagram show the appearance of cut ends of the stalk. So as you know, inside the trunk in here, these structures, it still contain the vessels. So in here, in the diagram A, it doesn't represent any of vessels. B, there is a vessel here, but C, this is the outer part or the covers part of the leaf of the trunk. And then in here is like all of parts of the tissues already contains blue dye. So the best answer, or based on the diagram shows in this question, um, the answer is B. Okay, if you wonder why the answer is B, because it's contained in here the vessel. So the waters and the blue dye inside these solutions, it must intact throughout these vessels. So the part of the plant that carries waters and another substance from the below part to the leaf, we call it the xylem. So inside this vessel must contain the xylem. So that's why some of blue dye we can see in this diagram. If we cut them up, cut the celery, and then we can see these structures with or contain the blue dye. So is it A, B, C, or D? So the best answer for number 3 here is B, right? Not C and not D. Why? Because it is only outer part, and in diagram D, all of the parts. Of course, it's not true, because some of the tissues they can't absorb the substance like the blue dye, because there is no vessels that carries from below parts to another part. It's only by these structures, or we call it vessels. Okay, you can see in this diagram in these questions, not they don't cut in the below part, but actually the upper part, which is uh, does not read even like the surface of these solutions, right? So the best answers must in here must be. All right, as you can see, this is the diagram, and then you can see if we put them up in this kind of blue solution, blue, red, and green solutions. After we cut them, okay, we can see these structures. These vessels will carries the substance, waters, and the dye inside the solution. All right, next question in here. You can see this is the diagrams of plant cells. This is the plant cells. So as you know that plants, animals, and fungi cells is really different based on its structure. And the diagram shows below show typical plant cells. Photosynthesis takes place in the parts of cells called a chloroplast. So as you know, if we label them and we give the name each of each part in here, based on the figures above, which letter shows a chloroplast. As you can see in these structures, labeled D, we call it that is nucleus. These are the centrals of the cells, which is control. They can control all activities of the cell. And then the structures like really huge part in here, so label it C. This is vacuole. And then the outer part, label it B. This is the cell wall that protect the cells. And then label it A. This is the organelles in that contain the substance called chlorophyll. So that organelles, we call it chloroplast. So the best answer for number 4 here is A. So the label it A. This is what we call it, the chloroplast. So if we make another picture, or we have another diagram, how do we know that is the how to differentiate with nucleus and these structures for chloroplast? So you can see the number of chloroplasts, it must be more than 2 or more than, this is like a lot of them, like in polycytes or sponge tissues. But for nucleus, it must be only one, because one cell only contains one nucleus. You can differentiate based on the numbers of the organelles inside. All right, next question here. Okay, I know that some of you might confuse. Okay, for number 5 in here, why can't we answer for number 5 here is A, waters for photosynthesis? Even if I explained to you the word equations, or the equation for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide or CO2, and then plus waters or H2O, and then it release the substance C6H12 or 6 or glucose, and then release oxygens or O2. So even if like the carbon dioxide and water is really important for photosynthesis, but in these diagrams, label A and label B, you can see if the plants we don't give we don't give them waters, or we don't watering them like several days. Okay, you can see the plants in here. The plants on the left have not water for like 3 days or 4 days. The photograph on the right shows the same plants, but a few days after it was water. After watering them, you can see the plants like fresh again. So the plant cells contains a lot of waters in it, right? Especially inside their fur walls, like you can see like previous diagrams. Inside the plant cells contain the big fur walls, so it must need waters inside that. If there is filled with waters, a plant cells that has plenty of waters is strong and firm, right? It will be strong and firm. And when all the cells in the plants are like this, they press out against each other and makes the whole plant firm and well supported. So when each of the cells contains enough water, so that means they can press out, and then it can press each other, and then make them like really strong to bond together. But if there is no water, so that means it will be shrinking. The structures of the cell will be shrink, like not enough of waters inside. And then when the plant doesn't contain enough waters, it becomes a soft and fluffy. And once all the cells in the plants are like this, the plants, like you can see in this diagram A, it's like collapse. So basically, because there's no, doesn't contain enough waters each of the cell. So after we pouring the waters inside in the leaf, in the vase, and then they can absorb the waters, they can take to all the cells. So it becomes strong and firm again. So what is the best describe for this experiment? So basically, the best answer for number 5 here is water for support, right? What not for cooling? Because for cooling, for make the plants cooling again, it's like when the temperature is really hot, and then the plants in absorb a lot of waters from the soil, but some of the plants they will distribute all the waters and that make it's cooling in the leaf. Some of the plants will release uh, the waters from throughout the stomata as water vapor, and then it can cooling the surrounding tissues inside the plant. And then water for transport is not a correct answer as well, because water for transport not occurs in these kinds of experiment, but occurs inside the vessels, or we call it xylem. All right. So the best answer in here is B, water for support. Right. The next question, the diagram shows an experiment to find the rates of photosynthesis in an aquatic plant in different conditions. So it experiments labeled A, B, C, and D. You can see in here we have a test tube, then we have ruler, and then we have a lamp. This is as a energy light resource for the plant. Inside that we have we call it hydrilla. This is the plant that live inside waters, and then we put them inside this test tube. Labeled A in here, we put the same plant, B, C, and D. So what the difference of this experiment? You can see the the light source, all right, the distance, the light source to the plant. So because this is not sunlight or the energy from the sun, this is from the lamp. So basically, if there is too far, the distance is too far, the plants can doesn't get enough the light energy from the lamp. So basically, it must be close. Close would be better. And you can see labeled A, B, C, and D. Only B and D in here, which is the plant and the light source, is close enough. So this is perfect for produce the bubbles. Why in these questions ask about which plants produce the most bubbles per minute? So the bubbles produced by the plant, it represents the oxygen. So basically, the oxygen represents how much, how well the plants do photosynthesis. So if that the plants produce enough bubbles or a lot of bubbles, that means the plants do a lot of photosynthesis. And we can see in because it's contain the waters in that in put inside the waters. So that means that when the plants produce enough bubbles, so that means that the plants do a lot of photosynthesis. So you can see here labeled B and D. This is perfect for the plant to get enough light energy from the lamp. And then what's wrong with labeling D? As you can see, close in here, they put or they add inside the test tube the ice. They put like ice cube there. They put small ice in that. So as you remember, there are substance, we call it enzyme. So basically enzymes, like they can fast the reactions. So as you know, photosynthesis, the reactions, they need enzyme as well for the whole process of the photosynthesis. So the enzymes, they can't work well when there is in the cold temperatures, or it's really hot temperatures. It must be like a room temperatures, or some enzymes can work like a little bit warm, but not really hot, and or not really cold. So when it really cold, it doesn't work. Sometimes doesn't work at all. So if we put the ice in here, so basically the reactions of photosynthesis cannot occur, right? Even if that is the light source in here is enough. As you can remember, the plants get enough waters because it's put inside the test tube to contain the waters, and then they get enough carbon dioxide because carbon dioxide can dissolve into the waters as well. And then for photosynthesis, they need chlorophyll. Chlorophyll already inside the leaf, and then they need or require light energy. They can get light energy in here, close enough from the lamp, label it B and label it D, but label it A and label it C is far, or the distance is far. And then they already get what the requirement for photosynthesis. And the problem here is the ice for level D, because if we put the ice, so that means it can prevent or inhibit the reaction. So the productions of oxygen and glucose, it doesn't it doesn't occur well. So only occurs well in label it in the diagram B, because there is like normal waters, and then they can do like good photosynthesis or well photosynthesis in here. So in here, the best answer is B, not A, C, or D. All right, I hope you understand about this diagram. Okay, next question. This is really easy. This is the tissues transport waters and minerals from the root to the leaf. There are only two tissues, phloem and xylem. Stems actually, phloem and xylem is contained inside the root, stem, leaf, and the trunk or the trunk. So the veins in here is like only the structures. We just call it the veins, but actually, even if the veins in the plant, it's contain the xylem and phloem as well. So as I told to you before, the theory is the structures that carries waters from below parts to the upper parts, or from the root to the trunk and then to the leaf. We call it xylem. And then after they do photosynthesis, it produces glucose. Glucose must transport or to a part of the body of the plant. They carries by the phloem. So the best answer for number 8 here is C, xylem. Next question, number 9. Which of the following absorb the energy from sunlight required for photosynthesis? This is what we call it, the substance chlorophyll. It contains in palacytes and sponge cells in the leaf. So the plants like cactus, there's no leaf. Basically, the leaf they already evolved into spines or pines, or what we call it. This is not the leaf anymore, and then it contains inside the structures like chloroplasts. They must deliver of spread out inside the stem or the trunk. That's why cactus plants have trunk. The trunks of the cactus plants is in the colors of the green. So it contains a lot of chlorophyll inside, but not in the leaf. But most of the plants, common plants, regular plant, they contains inside the leaf, palacyte tissues or sponge tissues. So the substance we call it chlorophyll. All right, okay, number 10 here. A student set up an experiment represents below. This is a light source from the lamp in here. We have test tube 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it adds same amounts of water, and then the same plant as well. And then they put inside this test tube. So if the water plants are measured for the growth rate after 2 weeks, which test tube gives the lowest number. So you can see here the closest the plant or the test tube inside the plant with the light resource, they can do better photosynthesis, because it's require anything that they need for photosynthesis. So they can grow well, of course, because they can produce the food, because they can produce food and can deliver the food. Of course, the cells grow well. So you can see number 1 will grow really well, and that follows with number 2, 3, and the last part in here must be C, because the light source is far. The substance in here sometimes it struggle to find or to reach the light source from this lamp. So the lowest number must be labeled 4. So basically the answer must be D. And then number 12, which minerals ions are needed for chlorophylls in plants? Okay, this is minerals. There are some minerals like the plants need a lot. Okay, as you know that phosphates, potassium, magnesium, and iron, and then nitrate. The last one is nitrate. So nitrate, we found a lot of nitrate in the fertilizer, right? In fertilizer, they add a lot of nitrate. Basically, it help the plant to produce proteins. And then for potassium, it's really important for whole reactions when the enzymes need these ions, potassium ions, uh, to work or to do their job better. And then they need magnesium and iron as well. This iron is really important to make the plant well enough to do photosynthesis. So basically, if the plant lack of this substance, the leaf of the plant turn into yellow, right? The magnesium and the iron. And the last one, phosphate. So the phosphate is really important to produce the new cells. Basically, all DNA, it require phosphate. The phosphate, one of the substance to make the DNA. So where there's no DNA, there's no nucleus. If there's no nucleus, there's not a cell. So the best answer to describe in here for number 12, which minerals ions are needed for chlorophyll in the plant. So the best answer is A, we call it magnesium. All right, I hope you understand about this one. Why not copper? Why is not nitrate? Why not calcium? Copper and calcium, this is the substance they need in small amount, but nitrate is really important, but not for chlorophyll, but they're really important for production of amino acid, and then it produces the protein. Amino acid, they combine together, and then can produce the protein. Okay, the last question here, number 13, which of the following cells types of plants absorb water that need it for photosynthesis? So, most of the plants, like even if they live, the habitat is on the lands or inside the pond or lake or river, their roots still inside the soil, right? They grow inside the soil. So inside the soil, they get enough waters and minerals. Waters and minerals can absorb by the root, and the root, they are organs, and then the organs, if we break them, if we break down the organs, we can get the tissues, and the tissues forms of the cell. So basically, the root, it contains the structures, we call it cells, and the cells, they are, we call it the root hair cells. Before it can reach, they can reach the vessels, it must be the structures of the root hair cells. As you learned, you already learned this in the 7th grade. This is root hair structures. So root hair structures, they make it the plants like larger the surface area to make the plants can absorb more waters and mineral ions. All right. The answer is not stem cells, because of stem cells, particularly there are several tissues, and then parasite cells we can find it in the leaf, and then fungi cells in the leaf as well. This is for photosynthesis. But waters, the plants absorb waters needed for photosynthesis towards the root, and then inside the root, not the surface of the root, basically, covers with root hair cells. So that's why the plants can get waters from the soil. That have waters as one, they can absorb or intact inside the cell, and then will brings it into the vessel, and then the vessel will brings it to the leaf for photosynthesis. Okay, the best answer in here is A. Okay, thank you everyone for your attention. I hope you understand the lessons. I hope you're doing well for the exam. That's all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.